Coach, Coach, thanks. We'll open it up for questions, and we'll go first to Mike Griffith at Dog Nation. Mike, if you got a question, fire away.
Yeah, Coach, I guess I just ask you, where do you start when you design a new offense? Obviously, Kirby's got some goals in mind, and you've got a lot of weapons you've got to learn about. But how did you start, and what direction are you going launching the new offense at Georgia?
Well, it started with, where, first of all, let me get my shirt straight. I got this thing all screwed up here. All right, there we go. First off, being three different places the last 5 years, there's a number of things that we've done in the past. So you start with what you've done recently, and then what you've done the last few years that you liked and that you wanted to carry over. Obviously, the games are different. The NFL compared to college football, there's different variations or, of what you want to accomplish, obviously from a tempo standpoint, from a personnel standpoint. But we're still in the process of building that. We went through the spring and did that, and then the summer, and we're continuing to work on that as we speak.
Thanks, Mike. Next question, Mark Weiser at the Athens Banner Herald.
Hey, Todd, kind of piggybacking on that question. When Kirby reached out to you and you talked about coming here, what did you two envision this Georgia offense looking like with you as coordinator, ideally?
Scoring points and not turning it over. I know that's really simple, but I mean, obviously that's when we spoke about his vision of the offense was certainly what I think every coach wants, which is take advantage of your personnel, the players that you can recruit here at the University of Georgia, doing a great job in terms of utilizing those people, put them in the best position to be successful. Obviously, as coaches, we are paid to maximize our players' measurable skill sets. So that's probably the first and foremost. Is the talent that we get here is finding a way every day to develop those players and then utilize their skill set to the best of their ability. Obviously, the most important part is moving the football and scoring points, whether that's running the football or throwing the football. But being explosive and not turning it over, it's a pretty simple game.
Next question from Seth Emerson at The Athletic.
Hey, Todd. Obviously, the last 5-10 years, whatever it is, the college game has seemed to work its way up to the NFL game when it comes to offenses, RPOs, passing, et cetera. Having gone from college to the NFL and now coming back, do you feel like you're bringing any concepts back from the NFL, or what did you learn? How might have your outlook have changed having gone to the NFL and now coming back?
Well, Seth, you're right. I mean, you definitely see changes in the NFL in terms of spreading the field out, athletic quarterbacks, RPOs. That has changed dramatically. And the bottom line is as high schools started doing more of that and then colleges did, then the players you're drafting, when you're drafting certain players, that's what they're accustomed to doing in quarterbacks. So they're more comfortable in gun, more comfortable with that style of system, trying to keep it as simple as you can. Obviously, it's very difficult at the NFL level against the best in the world, just like it is in this league. So there's obviously things that we will take from a number of places I've been over the last 10 years, from Oklahoma State to Southern Miss to the last couple stops I've been in the NFL. There's a number of things that I liked, the things that I've done in the past and things that other people did. So that's really what you do, is put together what you think is the best way to move the football and score points.
Next question from Zach Klein at WSB.
Hey, Coach, appreciate you doing that. Yeah, as you said, the basic philosophy is to score points and not turn the ball over. But was there an aha moment throughout your coaching career where you were, let's say, a run-dominated philosophy and then you shifted to more of a spread? Or is it just kind of gradually learning the information, seeing what else is out there and adapting to the personnel, and then that forms your philosophy and how to score more points and not turn the ball over?
All right, so that's a great question, because there's different times when you've coached as long as I have where you go through systems of early on where variety in offenses was going from pro to slot. I mean, that was a variety, like, holy cow, they're going from pro to slot. And differences in coverages might be what their variations were from pro to slot. And then, when you got into the early 90s, there were a few teams that were going one back and were spreading it out. But really still, your quarterbacks were not nearly as athletic. If a quarterback was a runner, he played a triple option style offense. If he was a thrower, much of those at that time were throwers and not runners. Obviously, the game has evolved in terms of the athleticism of the position. So you evolve as you get going. I try to think back, what would have been 18 years ago when I got with Les Miles, and Les Miles was a run it. I mean, he's an offensive line coach. He thinks 4th and 4 is toss it to Jacob Hester on toss power for a first down as opposed to throwing it. So, but before then I was at Louisiana Tech where we were no huddle and throwing it under Gary Croton. And then you go from there. So you develop the things you like, then you go to Oklahoma State back again. And I learned a little bit of the air raid with the Dana Holgerson had been there that he had learned through Mike Leach and that group from previously. So you develop the things you like, and then you go to the NFL, and like you said, you bounce around things you like there and ways of identifying to attack people. And again, it still comes down to utilizing your personnel to the best of their ability. You have to be able to be balanced. Balance isn't just run, pass. It's ball distribution to players. It's utilizing the whole field. Obviously, being able to comfortably turn around and hand the ball off is a big part of that for your quarterback. You got to be difficult. You got to be careful how often you put so much on a player's plate.
Next question from Chip Towers at the AJC.
Might have mute on. Might be on mute.
Chip, you there?
I've been through these Zoom meetings before. We have to tell somebody.
I'm sorry, Coach. It's
That's
unbelievable that I'm still doing that at this point. Anyway, I just wondering, before you left Cleveland, did you get a consultation with Nick Chubb before you took this job? And that's kind of a joke, but I do wonder about your relationship with Chubb and maybe what he might have told you about Georgia.
Well, not particularly, because we've been fired and I wasn't allowed back in the building, so it was hard to get that talk. But first off, and Nick's not the most talkative young man in the world, but first off, Nick is a tremendous football player. That's obvious, but he's an even better person. One of the hardest workers that we had last year, obviously, is one of those guys that you just spot the ball and he wants to go play. So it was a joy to be around. I mean, obviously had a tremendous year last year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get him the rushing title at the end of the year with Derrick Henry ending up with the title. But again, a tremendous player, tremendous person. Obviously was an important part of us offensively last year.
Thank you.
Next question from Anthony Dasher. Anthony, fire away.
Hey, Todd. I just wonder if you could just assess the talent level you feel you have in the quarterback room, and ultimately what this competition for starter will come down to.
Well, I really like our guys. We've got a good number of players at that position, starting from, a couple of transfers, as we all know about, and then some young players that are on a roster. So it's been fun to be in the room because they all very, I don't want to say they're different in terms of their personalities, but they all want to be really, really good players, and they really want to work at it. There's never an issue in terms of them understanding what you're trying to get accomplished offensively. So, obviously the difficulty of not having spring ball and going through some of those practices, there's only so many things you can do in meetings without actually getting out there and things they can do on their own. So right now it's an open competition. We're looking at all of the players because they all have talent. And so we're excited about getting to scrimmage this Saturday and seeing where we're at.
Dean Legge, you have a question, fire away.
Todd, a little bit more simply put, how do y'all score more points this year than they did last year?
Well, I'm not going to compare to last year because I've looked at the tape, but I wasn't here. So it's hard for me to assess what they did last year other than watching the tape. And so from that end of it, obviously the important thing is consistency in my mind. It's not about last year. I'm not comparing anything to last year. That's not what I'm talking about. But how can you consistently score against the opponents that you play each week? Because an average is only worth its salt if you consistently do it. You can't carry over points. So in one week, if you score 60, and the next week you score 10, you're averaging 35 points a game, but you're not very good offensively. You're very inconsistent. So how do you consistently score each week to put yourself in the best chance to be successful? And we hit on it earlier. I mean, obviously, you've got to find a way to be explosive consistently. And then you've got to be able to score touchdowns in the red zone. It's really pretty simple that way, is to be explosive offensively. And then once you get down there, find a way to score touchdowns. So taking advantage of those opportunities, and how you go about that, every team's a little bit different in that regard. So that's probably the most important thing. And I'm not comparing this year's offense to last year's. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that's in the history of us scoring points. It's been having explosive plays and scoring touchdowns in the red zone.
Go to Jake Rowe with a question, Jake.
Hey, Coach, just wanted to ask you, when it comes to your receiving group, you've got a lot of expertise when it comes to wide receivers. You guys have some young ones. You guys got some veterans. What's been your overall impression of what you're dealing with there from a pass catcher standpoint?
Again, a group of talented guys that have really been a joy to work with. I mean, they're excited about the opportunities they have in front of them, with a couple guys leaving last year, but we're still relatively young with certain guys that we're counting on, with George and some of the incoming freshmen, and some of the older guys that still have, have work to do as developmental players that need the reps. Guys like, Matt Landers, D-Rob. I know he's one of our older players, but again, from a developmental standpoint, Tommy Bush and some of our older guys that I think will push for playing time. Kyrus Jackson has been a relative surprise in terms of his consistency and the way he's played and developed. So, and again, that's what we're paid to do, is we're paid to recruit really talented players and then develop them and maximize their measurable skill set. That's what coaching is, and utilizing what they do bring to the table.
Next question, we'll go to the Macon Telegraph and Brandon Sudge.
Hey, Coach, kind of following up on that, but kind of in a bigger picture than only the wide receivers. Like, as the whole offensive unit here, from offensive line, tight end, running back, it's all new. And then here you are here new in your first year. How have you been able to kind of build that rapport, I guess, with these players, realize kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are, and kind of evolve that into your own offensive philosophy there? Like, has that been hard at all?
Sure it has. It's been hard because of just the the situation we've been dealt, in terms of spring ball, in terms of all of our players have had to deal with, not just us, in terms of the virus, school, the things they have to deal with on a personal level. It affects everybody a little bit different. So that's been difficult. When you lose a number of players to the NFL draft off last year's team, you've got a number of players that we have talented players, but they just haven't played probably as much football as you'd like, but that doesn't matter. No one cares. This is a get it done business. And the good news is we have talent, and we were better yesterday than we were Saturday. That's what you do. Is everybody asks, like, well, what do you know about the future and about the games and the virus? I really don't know. I know about today. Today's Tuesday, and we have meetings today, and then we'll practice tomorrow. We'll work hard to get our guys better and figure out what they can do. And that's probably the biggest thing. What can they do? How can they take the field and show what they're capable of doing? And one thing about going against our defense, our players and our coaches, is it's great in one respect, because you go against some really, really good players and outstanding schemes, and it really challenges you as a young player and a coach. The negative is it's very difficult to develop confidence. We're constantly trying to develop that part of it that allows your players to be successful on a daily basis and figure out what you can do, knowing that you're going against really good players on their side, really good coaches. But the fact is, for where we want to be, we're going to see some really good defenses that are very similar to ours.
Next, we'll go to the red and black. I think it's Griffin Callahan on the call. Griffin, is that correct?
Yes, thanks, Coach. I just wanted to see if you can talk a little bit about the running backs. I know, Zamir looks like he's going to be a big player there in the backfield. Who do you think behind him is going to step up and kind of get a lot of playing time and a lot of carries?
Well, again, hard to say it yet, because we really haven't we really haven't had a scrimmage yet. We've hit a little bit. The first day of pads was yesterday. So Zamir, I think, has had a tremendous offseason, has had James Cook. And then you take into account, Kenny McIntosh, who came in last year and had a really good start to his career, very versatile player, can do a lot of things running and catching the ball in the backfield. And then Kendall Milton, who showed up in the spring, and like a lot of true freshmen, you're excited to see. But again, until that position, especially until you put on the pads, it's hard to really tell. But I really like our guys. And then Dijon also as well. Those 5 guys, I think, are a very impressive group.
Next, we'll go with David Pascal in Chattanooga.
Hey, Todd, thanks for doing this. When you look at the quarterbacks who came in with Jamie and JT, how are they kind of different as far as their skill sets? And then how important is it to have an offense that you won't notice any difference no matter who's at quarterback?
Well, great question. And it's hard because it was only basically 5 days ago that as coaches, that we've been on the field with them throwing a football. I know that's hard to envision when you really think about it, that we have not been on the field with our players throwing a football till we started camp without having spring ball. Everything else is on their own when you have a football on the field. So that made it a little bit difficult. But the one thing I would say about Jamie is that he is a better thrower. Everybody talked about his athleticism, but he's a better thrower than people think. And I think JT's a better athlete. So, obviously there's film on both of those guys. Obviously, JT is a young player at USC throwing the football, and there's film of Jamie obviously running Wake Forest's offense very efficiently. And like I said, I think from the first 5 days, I think JT's a better athlete than we would have thought, and Jamie's a much better thrower.
Charles Odom from the Associated Press, question.
You've made references to the difficulties of not having spring ball. Kirby's spoken about the informal practices that were held before what was expected to be spring, and then the sessions that he called mini camp this summer. To what extent were the players, especially the quarterbacks, able to take advantage of those sessions to kind of make up for not having the usual spring ball?
First of all, our players have been great through this whole situation, and coming back, being here, then leaving for approximately 3 months, and then coming back since whatever that be, early June. I think our players have handled it unbelievably well and have worked awfully hard to get to this point, as have the quarterbacks to get here. Obviously, when you're doing meetings and the walkthrough stuff on the field, there's a lot of mental work, a lot of mental sweat that goes into it to try and do it better than they do it, because ultimately that is how you get it done, is doing it better than they do it. There's very few new schemes. There's very few. There are sometimes, but a lot of people run the same things. Just how do you do it better than they do it? How do you maximize your players? I already said that measurable skill set and do it better than they do it. And that's probably the biggest thing during that time, is trying to make sure that you're able to stack plays, as many plays you can stack where it looks like you want it to look like. And we're building that now. But there is nothing like getting out there and having it be, I wouldn't call it live, but you're actually able to practice.
Mark Schleybaugh with ESPN. I have a question for Coach Monken.
Hey, Todd. The previous offensive line coach, like huge, big offensive linemen. What's your philosophy on the guys up front?
Well, Mark, you're exactly right. Getting here, we got big guys. I mean, the good news is they're big and athletic. I mean, it's like, I guess, every position, like big, fast, physical, smart, tough. I mean, everybody's looking for the same guys. Obviously, in this league, you have to have guys that are able to move people up front and still be able to move their feet and be able to pass protect. And it's a really, really good group. Obviously, we lost a number of players that either came out early or transferred, but it's not for a lack of talent. It's just a matter of reps, getting our guys in the right spots. But you're right. I mean, we have good looking players, as good as anywhere I've been in college. It's impressive, and I'm excited to see our players to continue to develop.
Okay, now we've got several more minutes, so we'll open it up just for open questions. If you can remember to try to mute and unmute yourself when you ask the question so we don't have too much background noise. So anybody with a question, fire away.
Coach,
Coach,
can you elaborate a little bit on Dwan Mathis and Carson Beck? I know you talked about JT being a better athlete than maybe people realized and Jamie being a better thrower. What have you seen out of Dwan and Carson Beck so far as their attributes and where they're at?
Been impressed with both of them. Both of them are very talented young players. Obviously, Dwan last year missed part of the season. But with Carson coming in the spring and being here, obviously was here for the bowl game, you can see a lot of things that you like from Carson's end of it, from his throwing and his athleticism. Dwan, his athleticism and his arm talent as he continues to develop. And they've been rotating like the other guys in terms of giving them an opportunity to compete for the job. So their future is really bright.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's go to, I forgot Vance Levy. Vance, I know you want to ask a question, so go ahead, Vance.
thanks, Mike. Hey, Coach, judging from your voice, I'm assuming you're fitting in pretty well with the high-energy staff that Kirby's put together with him at the top. How does that coaching staff compare to some of your NFL stops as far as high energy?
Well, I think well, it's a little bit hard to compare because you're dealing with your practices are different. The number of players that you have are different. I've been around high energy coaches at every level. There's high energy coaches in the NFL. There's high energy coaches in college. And obviously everybody has to be themselves. And obviously they're paid to get the best out of their players, and everybody has their own way of getting that done. I have to remind myself at times that, the bottom line is to try and get the best out of your players, and that isn't always to scream and yell. And so I have to remind myself of that the bottom line is to teach and to develop and to build confidence as opposed to tearing that down. And a lot of times my frustration and getting on the players is because I didn't do a good enough job of getting them to do it the way I'd like to do it. I did a poor job of that. So the bottom line is I'm excited. I do like our staff's energy. We have a lot of it. Obviously, it comes from our head coach, Coach Smart, very energetic, very detailed. And so it's been fun. It's been fun the first 5 days.
Hey, Todd, you mentioned that this is a talented group of players you have. Do you see the potential with the pieces you have to become a more explosive offense in terms of big plays? And what is the key as a play caller to doing that?
Well, I hope so. It's a lot more fun that way when you're explosive. Funny how it works. Obviously, how do you get explosive plays? Well, first off, your ability to run the football, put the defense in run pass conflicts is the number one way to gain explosives, either hitting open space in the intermediate levels or over the top. And then the next part is how do you get skill players in space, really good skill players in space that can make people miss. And so that's at every level. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And I think we have those guys to do it. And again, the proof will be in the pudding once we get to playing games, but I do like what I see.
Hey, Todd, this is Connor Riley with Dog Nation. When you're evaluating quarterbacks, what are some of the more important qualities or characteristics that you're looking for?
Well, first of all, accuracy is number one, because if you're going to throw the football, you have to be accurate with the football. That would be number one. How are they accurate in terms of throwing the football? Mental toughness, I think that's up there. That's got to be a big part of it, how they handle because quarterbacks are as closely aligned with winning and losing as coaches. They're the closest you're going to get in terms of your players being aligned with winning and losing. So those guys have to be handle the ups and downs of the position. So the mental toughness part of it, the ability to sustain through the ups and downs of playing the position and the media scrutiny. The next part is athleticism, the ability to move and extend plays. The game has become that so much more in terms of your athleticism. So when you're talking about accuracy, mental toughness, and the athletic ability to escape and make plays are probably the top three. I'm probably missing some that are off the top of my head. Those are pretty important characteristics. Hard to be a statue anymore and be consistently explosive and be able to move the football.
Coach, and so everybody's definition is different. What is your definition of an explosive play, and what's your goal per game in that category?
Well, it's interesting. To me, it's a 12-yard run or a 16-yard throw, and you're always trying to be in the top 10 in the country in everything that you do. That's obviously going to change this year. I think from a number standpoint, I think it's going to be basically in terms of where you finished in the league with explosives, points, all of your statistics because of the games you're playing. I mean, this is very similar to an NFL schedule. I've been through that before. You have 16 tough games, 16 quality opponents. So statistically, to me, it's going to be in terms of where we rank amongst the teams and not really in terms of numbers, because the numbers are going to be a little bit different this year. But the bottom line is you want to be explosive 1 out of every 8 plays. And that's approximately, you're looking at about 10 a game. And that's going to put you somewhere in the neighborhood in the top third, top quarter in the country. And then if you're getting 12 to 14 a game, then you're you're hitting on all cylinders. You're going to be in the top 10.
We have time for about 2 more questions, folks. 2 more questions.
Coaches, Chip Towers with the AJC. Just that 2011, it's still amazing to go back and look at the Oklahoma State stats from 2011. Was that as much fun as you've had running an offense? And I guess you note there everybody thinks of air raid, but I guess Joseph Randall had over 1,200 yards that year. But does any of that stuff still apply nowadays to the game that's the way it's being played now?
Sure it does. And we had really good players. I mean, I was very fortunate to fall into a great situation of an established offense, high number of returning players that early on when I learned that system carried me. And it was a lot of fun because we had a lot of really good players. And up front, quarterback, receivers, running backs. And that's usually the sign of a really good offense is you have good players. It's a sign of either side of the ball. You have good players and good coaches. So I thought we took advantage of that. We had really good coaches that have gone on to do great things at other places or still there. So I was very fortunate to be around a great staff and some really good players. Unfortunately, when you talk about that year, some really good things, but obviously a very disappointing loss at Iowa State that is very hard to really go beyond even 10 years later.
Hey, Coach, Jed May with the Macon Telegraph. I wanted to ask you, a lot of the talk is about, Daniels and Newman, at the top of the quarterback room. What do you see and what do you look for from the walk-ons in a room like that in this type of camp? And what have you seen from those guys, particularly a guy like Jackson Muschamp?
Well, first off, it's with all of our walk-ons, including the quarterbacks, there's a number of things that we do from a practice standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, that we need those guys to give us looks. And they're invaluable to what we do. And I tell our scholarship guys all the time, think about what these guys sacrifice to be here. They go through everything you go through. They lift, they run, to just be a part of it. And they don't get paid a dime, to just be a part of the Bulldog family. I mean, it's unbelievable. These guys just want to be a part of it and be able to run out of that tunnel and represent the University of Georgia. So I played Division III football, didn't get paid to play. Awesome experience, and for these guys to be a part of it, it's exciting for them that's something they've decided they want to be a part of. But for the quarterbacks, they'll do some of the signaling they have in practice. They've been a part of the signaling. They're a part in the meetings in terms of, obviously everybody's involved in terms of when we ask questions, and they have a chance to be involved. Obviously, having Jackson here. Being a coach's son, it'll be interesting down the road. It's a little bit early now with Jackson just getting here, some of the other guys to compare where else they've seen or where they've been. But those guys do a number of things for us quarterback wise when we need them in other areas for drill work.